Chapter 25. The Triple Transformation, the Life Divine. So as the crust of the outer nature cracks, as the walls of inner separation break down, the inner light gets through, the inner fire burns in the heart, the substance of the nature and the stuff of consciousness, refined to a greater subtlety and purity, and the deeper psychic experiences, those which are not solely of an inner mental or inner vital character, become possible in this subtler, purer, finer substance. The soul begins to unveil itself. The psychic personality reaches its full stature. So when does it reach its full stature? When the crust of the outer nature cracks and the walls of the inner separation break down. So then the soul, the psychic entity, then manifests itself as the central being which upholds mind and life and body and supports all the other powers and functions of the spirit, and so on. Then what happens after that is this process may be rapid or tardy according to the amount of obscurity and resistance still left in the nature, but it goes on unfalteringly so long as it is not complete. As a final result, the whole conscious being is made perfectly apt for spiritual experience of every kind. Turned towards spiritual truth of thought, feeling, sense, action, tuned to the right responses, delivered from the darkness and stubbornness of the tamasic inertia, the turbidities and turbulences and impurities of the rajasic passion and restless, unharmonized kinetism, the enlightened rigidities and sattvic limitations or poised balancements of constructed equilibrium, which are the character of the ignorance. So when this happens, then we get free from all these, the three gunas and their action on us. So the tamasic, rajasic and sattvic, the rigidities, the darkness, the ignorance, the inertia, the restlessness, the rajasic passion, the stubbornness of the tamasic inertia, all that disappears. When does it disappear?
When the inner crust breaks and the psychic
comes forward. So this is the first result. But the second, so this is the first result that this happens. So, I had read a very beautiful passage, I think I told you once, that the three gunas, I had always wanted to know what were the coefficients, if I can use the mathematical term, of the three gunas when they are purified, elevated and sublimated. So, in a particular place, Sri Aurobindo writes that there were three equivalents he had given. So this is the first result. First result is this change of the lower three gunas to the higher gunas. And then the separation between the inner and outer nature breaks. The psychic comes forward. The confusions and they are dissipated, and obscurities, deceptions, self-deceptions, exactly everything can be seen. We can see our own shadows and we get an inner sense of what is right and wrong. And when we are even making a mistake or erring, the inner voice and the inner presence is so strong that we can sense it. Okay? So then, this is the first result. But the second is a free inflow of all kinds of spiritual experience. Experience of the self, experience of the Ishvara and the divine Shakti, experience of cosmic consciousness, a direct touch with cosmic forces and with the occult movements of universal nature, a psychic sympathy and unity, an inner communication and interchanges of all kinds with other beings and with nature. Now, this is very important. What is the second thing? Is a free inflow of all kinds of spiritual experience. Experience of the self, experience of the Ishvara and the divine Shakti, experience of cosmic consciousness. Somebody said, when do you experience cosmic consciousness and what is cosmic consciousness? Well, here it is. Comes in as a second result of the psychic being coming forward and the outer nature becoming under the influence of the psychic. So, the experience of the cosmic consciousness, but very interestingly, why this is so different is that unlike when you are ascending in consciousness and disappearing or, living in the samadhi experience or the experience of moksha or nirvana, you lose empathy and connection with the world. But here, with the psychic, is quite different. The descent of the spiritual into the being and the bringing forward of the psychic, both these movements actually happen at the simultaneous. They're not one after the other. But when that happens, this is an interesting thing. Experience of cosmic consciousness and a direct touch with cosmic forces and with the occult movements of universal nature. A psychic sympathy and unity and inner communication and interchanges of all kinds with other beings and with nature. So you can start communicating with animals, you can hear what they are saying, you can be sensitive to trees and to plants and to nature, and you get it almost like everything is speaking to you when you look at them. You can sense an inner life. Yeah, and you can also sense their feelings, what they're trying to say to you. It's almost like the whole occult world, the inner worlds of communication with not just human beings, but all beings, and all of nature is opened up. It's quite interesting. I'm sure you've had glimpses of it. All of us have. When we are in a certain consciousness, we get a sense that, suddenly everything opens up. You see things and you hear things and you feel things in a very different way. So that is a kind of a touch of the same experience. But then this becomes a settled fact, not just once in a blue moon, when this comes forward. Okay? So, and the divine Shakti, experience of cosmic consciousness, a direct touch with cosmic forces and with the occult movements of universal nature, a psychic sympathy and unity and inner communication and interchanges of all kinds with other beings and with nature, illuminations of the mind by knowledge, illuminations of the heart by love and devotion and spiritual joy and ecstasy, illuminations of the sense and the body by higher experience, illuminations of dynamic action in the truth and largeness of a purified mind and heart and soul, the certitudes of the divine light and guidance, the joy and power of the divine force working in the will and the conduct. How wonderful. So why are we not seeking after this? We don't make it the sole purpose or even a large purpose of our life. It's peripheral, it's not like we're focused on this. It's like you're focused on, you're focused. No, I'm just saying, but do we ever put this as a focus in our life?
But pleasure is definitely one focus, one main focus. Running through all
strands. So pleasure in everything, whether it's pleasure through watching television, pleasure through, what could it be? Food, Not even the foremost or major. It's quite okay if it's not the only, but is it the foremost impulsion in our life? That is the question. And is it in any way an impulsion or focus? Do we actually say that this is the focus that we have to work on? And that is our main, focus. So it might be an intention. Yeah, at least you're saying it. Earlier it wasn't even there in the consciousness. So when you have this when you see what kind of experience it can bring one and how it can change one's whole consciousness and life and the quality of one's life, you just wonder, what is it? I think there is a drag in our nature, the inconscience, and it's like what Mother says, that you keep pouring our light and pouring our force into you, but it keeps going into the subconscious darkness in your being. So after some time you forget the light, you forget what has happened, and you go back to the old way. So I think it's some sort of a drag in evolution that sort of absorbs it all and doesn't allow the being to really come out of that darkness into the light. And it takes a long time to do it. But if one keeps the focus, now how does one keep the focus is the question. So every day, instead of putting oil on our feet or oil in our hair, or what do all of you people do, I don't know, in the evenings or mornings, or when we have our food, or when we do our exercise, or what else do we do? Work. How much time do we give to this particular pursuit? I'm just asking these questions for all of us. It's something that we need to bring into the light, so that, because I don't think it's pursuit after pleasure. So maybe we need to bring this more forward into our collective consciousness also. The collective can help the individual. Yes? What are your thoughts on that? Study. But we have to focus on study. We can study and then forget. We've been studying this for many, many years. So when does that critical point come when the study turns into a pursuit? It's a pursuit for something. So I think it's a pursuit to live, to understand what this means, how it'll change the quality of your life. Somewhere that understanding is not fully cognizant in all the parts of our being. Somewhere we imagine, or there's a part of us that thinks that this is going to be very dry and dull and very, it's going to take us away from, understanding. And I don't know. I'm just thinking. Yeah. So is it an atavism, or is it a thought, or is it a fear, or is it what is it? How would you call it? Is it that comes from some part of your being that's almost obscure that keeps pushing it deep in the cells of the being? Yeah. So this is, these are all experiences. I mean, it's a fact. You can only call it a terrible drag that pulls you back. Almost this has to become, we have to understand and have faith in what Sri Aurobindo is saying, that your whole life changes, and make this so strong in our consciousness that it sort of subsides, or at least pushes out the darkness to enough degree for this to start activating our life in some way, So I think one of the things is to keep a focus, to keep it as, see what is a central focus that you want to work on, and keep going back to it every day and measuring the day according to that. If that's one way of doing this and keeping that kind of thing. Now again, the ashram, the samadhi, the shrine, meditation, reading, all of that helps in this. Anything that, once we lose touch with that, then it's finished. Or you can do it, of course, mechanically. That's the other option. So, no, if you do it mechanically, there's no value. So, if you do it mechanically, you have to get out of that mechanics. Nobody is born with it, unfortunately. This is the only purpose. According to mother, it doesn't come early in life. It takes 30 years. I don't know, I haven't heard of anybody who was born with it or came really early in life, except the mother herself. She had it. And she had it before Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo took even time to get into it. He was in his late 20s. Mother had it when she was very young. She was 6, 4. She was quite remarkable, but then you know who she was. Well, I mean, I don't think that can be an excuse, because after all, once you're in the human body, you're part of the same human nature. You can't avoid it. We're not in any way.
So, it is again, there's so much said that the children born after a certain year and all that, and they have, I mean, evolution-wise, the coming of the supramental, it is doing something. So then it becomes even more important for parents and teachers and all, because the child, we say, is closer to the psyche.
If that is encouraged and inculcated,
then it will be much easier.
So that's why if we know it, at least if to the extent it may take a longer time in us, but at least the children who are in contact with us.
Collective. So even in Lavini, to make this the central focus.
Then you'll need very special teachers.
We have.
What about the rest? Okay. So let's continue. This is the first result. But the second is a free inflow of all kinds of spiritual experience. Experience of the self, experience of the Ishvara and the divine Shakti, experience of cosmic consciousness, a direct touch with cosmic forces and with the occult movements of universal nature, a psychic sympathy and unity and inner communication and interchanges of all kinds with other beings and with nature, illuminations of the mind by knowledge, illuminations of the heart by love and devotion and spiritual joy and ecstasy, illuminations of the sense and the body by higher experience, illuminations of dynamic action in the truth and largeness of a purified mind and heart and soul, the certitudes of the divine light and guidance, the joy and power of the divine force working in the will and the conduct. These experiences are the result of an opening outward of the inner and inmost being and nature. So these experiences, what experiences? All that we've just read here are the result of an opening outward of the inner and inmost being and nature. So when this inmost being and nature opens outward, this is what happens to you. Okay? Isn't that wonderful? So these experiences are the result of an opening outward of the inner and inmost being and nature. For then there comes into play the soul's power of unerring inherent consciousness, its vision, its touch on things, which is superior to any mental cognition. There is there, native to the psychic consciousness and its pure working, an immediate sense of the world and its beings, a direct inner contact with them, and a direct contact with the self and with the divine. a direct knowledge, a direct sight of truth and of all truths, a direct penetrating spiritual emotion and feeling, a direct intuition of right will and right action, a power to rule and to create an order of the being, not by the gropings of the superficial self, but from within, from the inner truth of self and things and the occult realities of nature. So, a very important step towards this, which I want to highlight here, is this sense of feeling anguished. When we begin to turn our consciousness within, back at ourselves, and not at the other or outward circumstance, that is the first step towards living from within or from the psychic consciousness or allowing the psychic. That means some influence of the psychic is beginning to enter your life. For example, when you make a mistake or when I make a mistake, maybe I shout or lose my temper or I'm harsh with somebody and it hurts you deeply when you do that. That is when your psychic sensitivity is beginning to mature. That means your psychic is in front. Somewhere it is telling you that look, what you're doing is inappropriate. What you're doing is against the very soul and deeper truth of your own being. So, in the same way, when you lapse into unconsciousness, for example, you go binge watching television serials, or binge doing, whatever else you do. We do, all of us. Or, what you think about your own life, things that you get that feeling of unease, that something tells you, oh, this is now, what I'm doing is I'm allowing myself to go into a tamasic mode or a rajasic mode or an inconscient mode. Now, when it starts hurting you, okay, when it starts pricking you, when anything happens, you start looking for the cause from not outside, but inside yourself, for what is the reason why. And you also participate in the problem. You do not say, this is not my problem, this is your problem, or you are to blame. When this stops happening, when you begin to understand that sympathy comes, that this is, what is my role in this? Or how can I help? Or how am I responsible? When that attitude and that nature, that thing happens, it's the first step of the psychic influence in the outer nature. So whenever you get that feeling or that pain in yourself, and when you are tortured by your own self, not by others, but by your own weaknesses, by your own incapacities, by your own darknesses, by your own nature, and it hurts you and pains you, that is when the psychic is coming forward. That is when you have to nurture that. Don't let go of it. Don't brush it aside. Take cognizance, because if you brush it aside, you will again close the door, which is often what we do. We do feel it, but then we brush it aside and then find a way of again going back into the old way. So, am I making sense? Yes? Now, there is then, native to the psychic conscious in its pure working, an immediate sense of the world and its beings, a direct inner contact with them, and a direct contact with the self and with the divine, a direct knowledge, a direct sight of truth and of all truths, a direct penetrating spiritual emotion and feeling, a direct intuition of right will and right action, a power to rule and to create an order of the being, not by the gropings of the superficial self, but from within, from the inner truth of self and things and the occult realities of nature. Yes, Sri Aurobindo goes on to say that some of these experiences can come by an opening of the inner mental and vital being. So even when the inner mind and the inner mental and the inner vital being opens, you can still get some of these experiences. It doesn't only happen when the psychic comes completely forward. Through the inner mental and vital, you can get it. So even if you're living from within, you can get these experiences. Living from within means that you're poised within. You're in touch with your inner mind, inner vital, and inner physical. Some of these experiences can come by an opening of the inner mental and vital being, the inner and larger and subtler mind and heart and life within us, without any full emergence of the soul, without any full emergence of the psychic entity or the psychic being. So even before the full emergence, this is what I'm trying to say. It comes back to this point. That is when this happens. When your inner mind, inner vital comes forward, you will feel this. You will feel this consciousness. Feel very differently. Have a deep inner empathy. And you will experience not just the pain of others, but you will experience also the fact that how you are part of the pain of everything else. So, inner mental and vital being, the inner and larger and subtler mind and heart and life within us, without any full emergence of the soul, the psychic being. Since there too there is a power of direct contact of consciousness. So, since there too there is a power of direct contact of consciousness, but the experience might then be of a mixed character. For there could be an emergence not only of the subliminal knowledge, but of the subliminal ignorance, an insufficient expansion of the being, a limitation by mental idea, by narrow and selective emotion, or by the form of the temperament, so that there would be only an imperfect self-creation and action, and not the free soul emergence could easily occur. In the absence of any or of a complete psychic emergence, experiences of certain kinds, experiences of greater knowledge and force, a surpassing of the ordinary limits, might lead to a magnified ego, and even bring about, instead of an outflowering of what is divine and spiritual, an uprush of the titanic or the demoniac, or might call in agencies and powers which, though not of this disastrous type, are of a powerful but inferior cosmic character. But the rule and guidance of the soul brings into all experience the tendency of light, of integration, of harmony, and intimate rightness, which is native to the psychic essence. A psychic, or more widely speaking, a psycho-spiritual transformation of this kind would be already a vast change of our mental human nature.
When one experiences this life, this feeling of integration, because it is almost, a little risky to go into the inner mind and all of the magnified ego is.
Yeah.
So these would be like safeguards.
These would be safe to check, yeah.
There's a feeling of integration and division.
Yeah. So again, sympathy. But the psychic does influence through that. So if you get this experience, that is a safeguard, that when you can see that if these things are not there, then you've probably gone into the magnified ego, or the whatever it might be, the different levels of vital or mental or. So this is important what he's saying, that the psychic coming forward is, or at least if not coming forward, even before the full emergence, the influence of the psychic and the nurturing of the psychic entity and creating the environment for it to influence the outer being and then slowly to come forward is the most important safeguard that we can have, and also the most important work that Sri Aurobindo is saying in the triple transformation, the psycho-spiritual change. When this starts happening, there is already a vast change of our mental human nature. A psychic, or more widely speaking, a psycho-spiritual transformation of this kind would be already a vast change of our mental human nature. But all this change and all this experience, though psychic and spiritual in essence and character, would still be in its parts of life effectuation on the mental, vital and physical level. Its dynamic spiritual outcome would be a flowering of the soul in mind and life and body, but in act and form it would be circumscribed within the limitations, however enlarged, uplifted and rarefied, of an inferior instrumentation. It would be a reflected and modified manifestation of things whose full reality, intensity, largeness, oneness, and diversity of truth and power and delight are above us, above mind, and so on. So, there's a note here. 1. The psychic and the spiritual opening, with their experiences and consequences, can lead away from life or to a nirvana, but they are here being considered solely as steps in a transformation of the nature. This note is under where was this written? 1. Yes. But all this change and all this experience, though psychic and spiritual in essence and character, would still be in its parts of life effectuation on the mental, vital and physical level. Its dynamic spiritual outcome would be a flowering of the soul in mind and life and body. So here it says that psychic and the spiritual opening with their experiences and consequences can lead away from life or to a nirvana. Maybe they can, yes. So, however enlarged, uplifted, rarefied, it would be a reflected and modified manifestation of things whose full reality, intensity, largeness, oneness and diversity of truth and power and delight are above us, above mind, and therefore above any perfection within mind's own formula of the foundations or superstructure of our present nature. So I think he's now entering into the spiritual, right? We'll take this up next time. This is a different thought. So that's why he says one effective way, often used to facilitate this entry into the inner self, is the separation of the Purusha, the conscious being, from the Prakriti, the formulated nature. If one stands back from the mind and its activities, and so on. So, as the crust of the outer nature cracks. So, I think this is very important to read again and to assimilate before we go on further. This is extremely important. It's a practical practice. Okay, so we can stop here today.